Revenim, stimați telespectatori, de vă undăniși cu gânduri gândiți, de pe hidrobicicletă din Amsterdam. Toată lumea poze, dă Facebook-ul peste cap. La băieții ăștia nu le merg boxele, cred. Batonii cu picioarele în barcă mai în spate.
So this is the Gentleman's Canal, one of the main canals here in Amsterdam. Also one of the, as you can see, more luxurious canals. This canal was once built for the high society here in Amsterdam during the 16th, 17th century. As Amsterdam became rich by trading overseas mostly. And there was this growing demand of those tradesmen to have these very luxurious places to live. So it took over 100 years to dig out these canals by hand. And this canal in particular is quite a special one, as it's still the most expensive street even in the whole country. And it has to do mostly with the width of the buildings. As you look around, you can see that buildings here are way wider than they are on the other canals, and actually the whole city center, because usually people used to build more narrow places because it was cheaper. You used to pay taxes for the meters wide your house was, so in order to lower their tax rates, people built narrow places going up high. But here, as sort of a show-off of how much tax they actually could afford, people started to build these really wide places. Here on the left, we have the most expensive hotel in Amsterdam, the Wall of Astoria. Door bij de burgemeester, de club. After the bridge, if you look into the canal on the left, you can see the 7 bridges. Quite an iconic point here in Amsterdam, as it's the only canal where in one view you can see so many similar bridges. It's over here on the left.
Șapte poduri, ia uite-le, le vezi? De unde îți dai să zibă? Uite-ți-le, 2, 3, poți să le numeri. Spune-mi ce mă văd, 7 poduri.
Yo!
Am văzut 5 patru. Da, sunt zibă Brücke.
Kannst du noch die 7 Brücke dieselbe Zeit?
Ich habe 5 genau.
Nice. Op Facebook. Nice.
Tesla-urile l-am încărcat și cu Nissan-ul Leaf.
Ja. Ja.
Mă uit și eu să văd o sticlă aruncată în apă, ceva mic. În schimb, uite, o barcă vai mama ei, ha? A lăsat-o vreun pensionar acolo. O lișiță. E o lișiță. Doar că e mai gri așa.
Ja, dat wil ik echt
Nu
niet.
știam de ce să fie teșite.
Nee. En ik weet, ja, kijk, ik wil eigenlijk zelf een Assetboom draaien ook. Ja.
Da, nu s-a răspuns nimeni, am văzut.
Maar ja, hoe...
Băi, dar asta conduce și fără centură și vorbește la
Want
telefon.
Dave die gaat sowieso in de hopper draaien. En Julian ook. Ja. Die moet ik dan afsluiten misschien. Alleen, ja, alleen... Oh ja, het is ook wel weer lastig. Ik zou qua sound, als we een groove zou willen maken van de bogen, dan zou hij in de bogen moeten draaien. Maar goed, maar mismeleren, maar goed, dat, ja, dat, ook die andere kunnen we gewoon nee op zeggen nog, toch?
Sau cam duci câțiva de ele. Nu se face, urmă de vop se face.
Maar waarom wil ze dat? Nee, dat willen we echt niet. Toch? Dat lijkt me echt verschrikkelijk. Ja, maar ja, het is gewoon totaal niet wat wij zijn, dus ja, nee. Ik denk dat we dat niet moeten doen. Dan wijken we echt te veel af van ons eigen ding.
Motor mișto.
Nee.
Ce era? Foarte frumos.
Ja, en sowieso, ja, ik bedoel, het zijn onze boekingen, dus zij moet gewoon zich er in die zin niet zoveel mee bemoeien. Dat wij eerst gewoon zelf willen bedenken wie we willen hebben. En dan als wij het regelen. Toch?
De ce au este o mașină dacă sunt biciclete?
Au ales ei să treacă și pe bicicletă.
Era frig afară.
Sau pe zăpadă sau pe plouă, dacă se face, nu ce filmează.
Ar fi fost frig afară, mai bine aici.
Se vor ghinită la acolo.
Nou ja, zeg maar dat ook dat gewoon nog open ligt.
Ja, dat
dat nog
ja,
niet
gaat er nou
wordt, weet je, we moeten gewoon zorgen dat we gewoon echt dat gewoon het heft in onze handen ligt.
Nu pentru tine. Bun, am luat o acadă.
Ja, dus
Să vedeți ce acadele ne-am luat.
besloten hebben.
Nu știu dacă se vede semnul pe ea.
Denk ik.
Daar
Ik denk
werden
dat het
ze
echt
weer.
belangrijk is om daar een beetje hard in te zijn.
Maar iets
Anders dan is het uiteindelijk op geen enkele manier meer iets wat wij aan het doen zijn.
N-ai făcut mâna la copilul ăla.
Het is nu binnen een paar uur.
Eu de-abia acum l-am văzut.
Stai comod, stai cum vrei tu, ia sperneță.
Logisch dat ja, het is hun eigen probleem dat ze zo laat ermee zijn.
Tesla Model X, ia uite
Morgen
aici.
moeten we dat ons
Dat is
ook
albastru.
wel kunnen lukken. Ik bedoel, morgen moeten we het wel goed kunnen hebben. Ja, precies. Ja. Oké.
Miliarde de biciclete.
Zeker. Ja, zeker. Oké, ik moet weer even hangen, maar ik bel je straks nog even terug, oké? Super vet. Later.
Până și ăsta e hybrid plug-in.
Oh, you picked a beautiful day actually to go on a boat.
It was by hazard. We didn't pick it.
No?
On the road we had one below zero.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
From Germany?
În Germania.
Oh, really? Where in Germany do you stay?
Koblenz.
Hamburg?
Koblenz.
Koblenz, ah, ja.
Koblenz is in the main.
Ja.
Mami, Vaporul are o cameră și în față.
So if you look around, I explained that these buildings were all once built as houses, but if you look closely into them, you can obviously see that more and more buildings are used as offices for business. As this area is so expensive that private persons barely can afford it anymore. If you will see, if we slowly head for the west, buildings will start to get a little smaller. and you will see that more buildings are actually still used as houses. And this is because they started building these canals on the west side, so on the upper other side, and as they build it further and further, the new neighbor continuously wanted to build something bigger than the one next to him. So that's why on the east side you see these humongous buildings, totally out of proportion, you could say, compared to the ones on the west side, just because they wanted to show off to each other. If you look into this street here, you can see that both sides of the streets are leaning a bit forward.
Yeah.
Now you have probably noticed, passing by Amsterdam, that buildings have all kinds of weird shapes. They're either leaning to the left or the right, sometimes always getting a question mark, or leaning forward as such. Now there's two reasons for this. The reason for the buildings leaning forward like there has to do with the hooks, which are all attached or mostly attached to the tops of the buildings, attached to those beams. Those are used to move things in and out. Back in the days, you must imagine that a lot of buildings, especially the top floors, were used for storage as warehouses. And as they did so on a daily basis or on at least a weekly basis, things had to be moved in and out. However, as stairs are here in Amsterdam very steep and they're quite narrow, it's very hard to move via the stairs. So you do so with the hook. Yeah. They found out, however, that if you do so having a straight wall and you pull something up, you mostly hit the wall. Though if you build it a bit tilted forward and then you pull it up, it stays free from the wall. So actually quite a clever constructional measure they took. So this is all done on purpose. This has nothing to do with like natural movement. However, the buildings which are leaning to the left or the right, and so this is obviously not done on purpose. It's very impractical. It has to do with the foundations here in Amsterdam. The whole city is once built on wooden pillars, and the ground here is a bit swampy. So the wood always stands in a certain degree of groundwater. And as long as this groundwater stays the same, it's fine. But when it starts to differ due to a process of oxygenizing, so new oxygen meets wet parts of the wood starts to rot. And so you could now say that the whole city, or the city center at least, is standing on rotten foundations, or at least the original ones. And the weight of the building slowly starts to settle to the sides where it's most weak. It's stabilized these days because obviously it's quite dangerous if you wouldn't do anything. However, in most buildings it's pretty weird, like in the building here, if you would put a ball on the right side of your room, it just rolls to the left side. So you pay fortunes for such a place, and you actually even don't have leveled floors, ironically enough.
Wow.
Pentru care n-ați înțeles, capitanul ne-a explicat că multe case sunt aplecate spre în față, fiindcă ridicau marfa cu cârlige și cu de-astea, cu... Păi da, nu zice. Așa, dar unele sunt aplecate stânga-dreapta din cauza că fundațiile au mai putrezit, fiind făcute pe lemn.
Cu 1656, o vezi?
Da. Și deși unele au niște chirii imense, nici măcar podeaua nu-i dreaptă. Dreaptă înăuntru.
What you can see here nicely is that people also wanted to make their houses look even, well, or at least as big as possible. So the facades mostly, well, make it look bigger than it actually is. Because here you can see that like the front is way bigger than the top floor behind it. This is a really nice shopping area. It's 9 streets. So if you like to go shopping, this is a place where a lot of boutiques and so.
When it says AN 1656 on the building, it means it's actually finished like that in 1656, or?
It was built in that year, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's like the first stone or the finishing year, but it's the, well, yeah, the building year. Yeah. So as I said, on the west side they started, so we're not gonna follow the canal all the way, but if you would follow it all the way, the oldest building you see there is from 1570, if I believe, old warehouses. And it's pretty nice because you can see that although it's just 100 years younger than buildings here, it's a total different type of architecture. Also thinking of how a warehouse would be most efficiently built and designed.
Ce faci? A fost în sau drept?
Da.
De heren de lelie op naar de printen, de club.
Copiii nu se joacă fotbal pe aici? Cred că nu ca se joacă, că nu văd nicio minge în apă.
Pe de asta nici se joacă. Yeah.
So here you see these things built in front of the walls. Now here in Amsterdam we have a pretty big issue with the state of the walls next to the canals. Apparently there's 200 kilometers of walls which will collapse in the next 100 years or so if nothing is done. Well, you can imagine that this is quite a costly process to restore all these walls. So they are now at the moment doing these tryouts with this measure. What they do is they build this wall in front of it with a lot of sand in between and strings which are attached to the original wall, and these push the wall back in its original shape. It's a bit ugly though. Here on this canal you can already see again that buildings are way smaller or way more narrow than on the Gentleman's Canal. So this was a little less expensive canal.